service. If I like, I order twice. Hibachi, got the gravy on the rice. Rolling in Mexico.
Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome into another edition of the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A. My name is Jeremy Betts. Welcome into the show where we are all about answering your questions and finding out what's really happening inside Steeler Nation. And today I've got a special guest with me. It's somebody who's really close to the action, somebody that you've probably seen a lot of information coming out of his personal account. What if you're following along the Steelers training camp trail on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. This is a guy who runs his own insider's website called SteelersNow.com. If you haven't checked that out, it's a great space to get fantastic coverage. And he is a guy that I've been trying to have on the show for a long time, and I'm really happy to have him here with me today. It's Alan Saunders. Alan, welcome in to the Steelers Q&A and the Steel Curtain Network. How are you today, man?
I'm doing good, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you've been on with Jeff Hartman before for his Monday morning conversations on the Let's Ride podcast. And so I'm sure you're familiar with Steel Curtain Network, and our fans are familiar with your work as well. But hey, how was a Sunday of training camp? I know the Steelers had a game on Friday, come back, a light day of work today, still plenty to improve upon, I'm sure. But how was Sunday's practice, if you just want to kind of give us an overview?
Yeah, Mike Tomlin called it like a get-right day. You go in, you look at the film, you try to work on the things that you saw as negatives in that film. Obviously, you know, we saw what they were. You can't work on all of them in a practice setting, especially in a day like today where they don't have pads, but the quarterback center exchange was a focus. And we got to see some of Zach Frazier working with the first team, which is something we haven't seen a lot of so far. And then I just think individually, some guys that I think were challenged in that game stepped it up. Quez Watkins obviously really struggled. He had not only his best day of camp, he might have had the best day of any wide receiver throughout camp. Wow. Today he was incredible. He cut off multiple long touchdowns, and he was very good. And so, you just kind of hope to see guys respond to the negativity, and I think you saw that today. So pretty solid day. Again, no pads, so nothing crazy, but probably get them on tomorrow.
Yeah, I think when I sit down and watch the game here just from home, right, and you're getting the broadcast, obviously, and you see the young players get in there, you see some of the sloppiness that it makes itself manifest when you're playing backups and when you're in your first action of the season, really, against another team. It's gonna happen to some degree or another. I think Mike Tomlin, though, was concerned with how sloppy it actually was, and it seemed to be beyond what he would call routine things routinely. Those things were what the struggles were. And so it seems like a rebound day was in order. I remember seeing a couple posts that there was a fumbled exchange at practice today, and that did not go over well for the coaching staff maybe. But that is something that they need to work on. And you mentioned Zach Frazier getting another opportunity. I want to bring up this question from one of our regular listeners, Danny Owens Jr. What changes to the starting lineup will be made after the first preseason game? You mentioned Zach Frazier jumping into the first team lineup today. Is that something that you could see happening more so as training camp goes along? Do you think that Herbig and Fields specifically together, their connection was enough of a problem to where Frazier stepping in could be an option for the Steelers at this point?
I don't think there was any real issue between Frazier and Herbig, or between Fields and Herbig. I mean, I think, they've had how many snaps since the start of camp? I think that was the first two that I've seen Nate Herbig snap that hit the ground. He's been very reliable in that regard. Other than that, I mean, I just think this is a second-round pick, a young guy who's come on a little bit lately, and they're trying to get him an opportunity to prove himself. Will he start in the second game? I don't know. I would say probably won't start, but I think you're going to see probably him get in there while the first team is still in there. You know, usually this is a game where you see the starters play a whole first quarter. So, yeah, I think you'll see Zach Frazier get in there with the starters. And then, how he does will dictate how much he continues to get. He's still a guy that I think could start in week one. I don't think you're going to see that switch made right away, but I'd still call it possible. Yeah.
Any other things you think could change after the performances in week one? I know you mentioned Quez Watkins having a bounce back day today. as a receiver. Now, as a return man, do you think his opportunity might be up in that regard, especially with Cordero Patterson coming back? Does that push people down the depth chart to punt returner that were otherwise kick returners? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, so I mean, Quez Watkins talked to us today. Actually, said he hadn't done it in a game since he was like a freshman or sophomore in college.
Okay.
It's like normally part of his routine. He was trying to add something to his game. Obviously, it didn't go very well. I think you can probably cross Quez Watkins off the list of punt return options for this team. But look, we all know Calvin Austin is the team's punt returner, and that's probably not going to change. So I don't really think it matters all that much. Maybe he'll get a try at kickoff return to do something different. Maybe he'll see if he can do it there. He's a guy that's interesting because he's been very up and down in his career. He's had hot and cold days. But he's never really been that much of a special teamer. I think the Steelers have really challenged him to try to add something in terms of special teams to his game if he's going to make this team. Right now there are 6 wide receivers with NFL experience. 5 wide receivers with NFL experience, and obviously the 3rd round pick, Roman Wilson, is good for the team. So that makes 6. Will they keep 6? I don't know. Certainly, if they make a trade for a wide receiver, as we've spent the last, 6 months talking about, these guys aren't. You got to find a way to separate yourself. You got to find a way to differentiate yourself. So I give Quez some credit for going out there and trying something. Obviously, it didn't work. Maybe they'll try him on kickoffs or as a gunner, or we'll see how things go there. But he does need to find a way to make an impact. He hasn't been very good at wide receiver throughout training camp either, let alone the special teams mishaps on Friday night. I thought it was much, much better today. So a really good sign for him. And he'll probably need to have a good game on Buffalo to keep himself in the conversation for that last roster spot at wide receiver.
Absolutely. That's going to be a battle to the very end for those final couple spots at wide receiver. You've got guys like Dez Fitzpatrick who have come on and played well when called upon. And you even look at John Rice Plumlee getting some snaps at wide receiver today. I'm curious your thoughts on Plumlee, the athlete. Is this a guy that the Steelers could value his athletic ability enough and his versatility enough to where he could make this roster? We know that he's a high draft pick in the UFL, right? So if the Steelers were to cut him and try to bring him back on the practice squad, there's a chance they could claim the rights to him. Is that something you could see him making this roster because of?
No, I can't see him making the roster. I can see him making the practice squad, though, and I think no one's going to pick the UFL over a practice. Well, the UFL doesn't happen until the spring anyway, so like he'd spend the entire year on the practice squad, and then the decision would be whether he wants to sign another contract with the Steelers or he would want to go to the UFL first. That would be his decision. He did say that the reason he picked the Steelers as an undrafted free agent was they were giving him the chance to play quarterback, and then nobody else really was. So I don't know what he's going to take to doing all this other stuff. I mean, he seems willing to do it, but he also seems like a guy that wanted a shot to play quarterback. I don't know if he's going to get that shot in a preseason game or not. It certainly doesn't seem like it right now. It seems like they're getting ready to play him at wide receiver this week, and I expect you're going to see a couple series of Russell Wilson to start, then maybe a quarter or so of Justin Fields, maybe even more, and then Kyle Allen to kind of clean things up. So I don't think he's necessarily. I can't find a way to get him on the 53-man roster, but certainly to the practice squad.
Sure. That's good. I mean, for a guy with his level of athleticism and the position that he wants to play, I think it's always intriguing to have a player of that caliber on the practice squad. You can do so many things when you're prepping for opponents with that type of quarterback. And I think he's a guy that the Steelers have obviously appreciated his willingness to work in multiple different areas. So we'll see how that goes for him. We know all the big storylines, Alan. We've been talking up the quarterback battle, whether it is a battle or not. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We've been talking about the wide receiver situation, but to me, and the thing I've stressed this whole offseason, the biggest thing that I've been watching throughout training camp and preseason, everything like that, has been this offensive line rotation and how these guys work their way in. Where Broderick Jones ends up, is Dan Moore Jr. going to be a part of this team? Can Troy Fautanu start at right tackle on day one? Who rotates in at center? How does a guy like Mason McCormick fit into this situation? I'm curious your thoughts on the offensive line, especially now that Troy Fautanu is going to be missing. I think you reported on Steelers Now that he's going to miss the remainder of the preseason with that injury. Does this affect the Steelers' offensive line rotation for the whole season, or just in the intermediate while he gets healthy? How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, I think you're going to see Broderick Jones stick at right tackle and Dan Moore stick at left tackle for right now. And I think it makes it a lot harder because of that to bring Fautanu in as a starter in the middle of the season, because then you have to make 2 changes to the offensive line. And you're going to have to bring him in at right tackle and move Broderick Jones to left tackle. And so, yeah, I think it kind of, to me, he was a guy that I was actually pretty high on being able to start the season as a starter. Like I thought he would start week 1. Thought he was on pace to start week 1 when he was injured, and now it's almost impossible to see that. Like I think it's probably going to be Jones and Moore, and I think it may end up being Jones and Moore for quite a while. This is a tough time to lose a guy to an injury. Now he's going to have he only took 20 snaps or something like that. Like he's probably not going to get another preseason game. That's not a lot of development time. It almost starts to look like, more like last season where Broderick Jones was around and it took time. Basically, it's going to take somebody else to fail, I think, at this point. Like it's hard to give him an opportunity to win the job right now.
Yeah. I think you're also looking at if an injury were to crop up, or maybe the Steelers get a deal they can't resist at the trade deadline or something like that for a Dan Moore Jr., for a team that's going to have an injury, something like that, where you would see a change. But the Steelers have talked about, Omar Khan's talked about this, that eventually Broderick Jones is the left tackle of the future for this team. But that eventually has always come with it's not maybe yet. It's not right now. It could be if we were to get what we want out of Troy Fautanu. But at this point, it does feel like, unfortunately, that you're going to see Broderick Jones stay at right tackle because of the unfortunate injury to Fautanu. I think that tackle group can work. What say you, though, about that with Dan Moore Jr. and Broderick Jones being your starters? Is Broderick good enough on the right side to be able to handle this for a full season, and keep whichever quarterback is back there upright all year?
Yeah, I think Dan Moore's he's fine. He's not good, but he's not bad either. I don't know. I think people have there are way out of line when they talk about him he's the worst tackle. I'm like, no, he's not. He's not great, but he's fine. He's not going to get your guy killed. Usually when he loses slowly. He's not that great in the run game all the time. Not consistent, whatever. I don't know. I think he's I don't have grave concerns about starting the season with Dan Moore at left tackle. Broderick Jones, I don't either. I think he could be a very good right tackle. Honestly, I think Broderick Jones may end up staying at right tackle. I've said that all along. I know the Steelers want to move him to left tackle, but he is a guy who's way better at run blocking than pass blocking.
Sure.
And he has a bad tendency in pass protection to get beat to the inside, which when it happens on the blind side is devastating to the quarterback. And so I don't know where Broderick Jones ends up. I think the plan is to move him to left tackle and play Fautanu at right tackle. I think on the surface that plan makes sense because Fautanu is just a little bit short to be an offensive lineman. I think you kind of minimize that weakness with him at right tackle. But we'll see. I think Broderick has some growing to do still. He's a young guy. He's working hard. I don't have concerns about him. He's just not proven yet. And until he is, it'll probably be a question mark as to the way things will actually end up.
Absolutely. All right. What we're going to do here, we're going to take a quick break on the audio side. If you're here watching live, we're not going anywhere. We will be right back after this. If you have questions and you're watching live, go ahead and pop those in the chat. We'll get to your questions in the second half of the show as well. But stay tuned as when we come back, we'll talk more here with Alan Saunders about the Steelers training camp and first preseason game. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. And welcome back to the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A. It's Jeremy Betts and special guest Alan Saunders. Alan, I want to thank you again for hopping on. I know you're busy. I know you're covering a lot right now with the Steelers, and Steelers Now is kind of your baby, right? It's are you the editor of Steelers Now? Tell us a little bit about your role there at Steelers Now.
Yeah, I'm the editor and the beat writer, and
Yeah,
also like human resources and video editing and shipping department. I got all the hats. Yeah, it's
sure.
pretty much all me there. And I got a good team. I got Derek Bell, who, if you're not
Yeah,
following his work,
absolutely.
is fantastic. And then Chris Ward and a couple other guys. My photographer Ed Thompson, my buddy on the road. So yeah, we're I got a crew. I got some help, but I do a little bit of everything there. Yeah.
Well, I noticed you're not wearing a hat right now. It's because you wear so many hats with your job. So
Actually, not a big hat guy in
sure, okay,
general. For a guy who wears a lot of hats,
yeah,
metaphorically only.
okay, not real life. My child is a massive Bluey fan, and they say for real life all the time. You are not a for real life hat wearer, just metaphorically, I guess. But hey, that's
Yes.
all right. We're talking some Steelers, and I want to go to the preseason game a little bit, and we'll get to some questions here in just a second. But a couple players that stood out to me, and I want to get your thoughts since you were there, and getting to check on this live. So I thought that there was a lot of good from Peyton Wilson on Friday night. I also thought that there was some issues there as well. And to me, it seemed like a rookie who was very hyped for what he was about to do. And so he made some big plays, but he also overran some plays, got lost in coverage a couple times. Some things that I think that he can improve upon, obviously, but you have to be excited about his upside at this point, right? With the speed, you see the instincts right away as well. I believe his first play on defense was a tackle for loss. He gets right in there, makes a play. How are you feeling about the growth and development of Peyton Wilson as we sit here today and how he can fit into this defense?
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought a lot of people were like, really pumping him up after that first game, and how I was kind of like, it was up and down, and there were some good moments. There was some missed tackles. There were some coverage, adventures. I think is safe to say. I talked to
Sure.
Peyton after the game, and he was like mad. He was like, man, I got to go watch the film. I got to see what's wrong. It's only one game, but I got to be better. And so it's very interesting to me that that's been so many people's takes, is that he was awesome, because I certainly made some plays, but I didn't think that he can be a lot better than that. He needs to be a lot better than that, specifically in pass coverage. If he's going, they've kind of given him this role as the dime linebacker.
Yeah.
Uh, Pass coverage is first and foremost there. He's got to do it all. So, I think that's, I don't want to say concerning. I think, he's a young guy and it's his first game, and I expect him to continue to be better, but it's definitely something to watch.
Sure.
And that will be, the way he earns more playing time. The next thing you do from nickel is you start to work into, from dime is you start to work in nickel in obvious passing situations. And he's not going to stop the run better than Patrick Queen and Landon Roberts. Like, there's no
Right.
path to playing time that way. It's going to have to be through pass coverage that he does earn more playing time. And so, look, Joey Porter Jr. was a very good rookie, and he started out only playing dime. I don't think it's a problem for Peyton Wilson to have the same sort of starting point, and then we'll see where he takes it from there.
Another player I wanted to ask you about is Corey Trice in the secondary. We saw him play briefly. I think he didn't get into the game till like the fourth quarter on Friday, but today on Sunday, taking some reps with the first team with Dante Jackson sitting out. That sounded like a vet day for Jackson more than maybe an injury. Was that what you took away from that
Yes,
as well?
yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
That day for
And
Jackson.
so great. So Corey Trice steps in. What do you see out of him? Do you see some growth there? Do you see a better knowledge of this defense, an ability to hang in coverage? What do you see out of Corey Trice as a boots on the ground over there in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, he's been like not himself yet, I think is the best way to say it. Still
Sure.
working his way back from that injury. In many ways, like it took him a couple weeks for me to feel like he looked comfortable hitting people, sticking his nose in the pile, making run fits, that kind of thing. I think it, and then the sort of fitness part of it, he's just, game reps are different than practice reps, and you got to be able
Right.
to do a bunch of them in a row, and probably took him a while to get back to there, even after he was sort of healthy enough to play a little bit. I think he's starting to look like himself, and himself is pretty darn good. Man, I think like this is a really good technical football player. He is not like the world's most physical cornerback. He is not the fastest cornerback. He just really knows how to cover. I think that was the thing about the tape at Purdue that was so enticing. And I think he's a guy that, like, they should feel pretty comfortable about as a backup corner. I know he doesn't have that much experience, has basically no experience actually.
Right.
But man, he's really, really sound technically. I think that's a good base. He's a hard worker. He's a diligent kid. So they don't have a lot of depth at outside corner with experience. Anthony Averett's kind of the only guy. I mean, Cam Sutton, but he's going to be suspended. So it's really just Anthony Averett. I don't even know if he's going to make the team. They could just decide to go with the young guys. So I think they're putting a big amount of responsibility on Corey Trice and so forth. I think he's doing a nice job of making them look pretty good for it.
Good stuff there. I got a couple questions from the listeners that we'll get to here. This one from Afton for it. Afton, thank you for your question. Thank you for tuning in every week. Who were you most pleasantly surprised by in the game is her question. Does anybody come to mind for you, Alan, off the top of your head here?
Most pleasantly surprised from the game. Man, it was a tough game for pleasant surprises. Let me tell you what. There was not a whole heck of a lot of that. I thought I wasn't really surprised, but DeMarvin Leal and Montravius Adams have been wrecking things all training camp on that second team defensive line, and I thought they absolutely carried that over into the game in a big way. I think Marv is probably the most improved player on this team from last year, certainly on the defense. I think he really looks good. So I don't know that I was surprised. He's been doing all training camp, but it was certainly an encouraging sign to see. I don't know. There wasn't a whole lot of good surprises there. Cam Johnston, I guess. I don't know. Like it was pretty ugly game.
Let me ask you about Ryan Watts in the secondary playing some safety. I thought he made a couple good plays in the game. What have you thought about Ryan Watts and how he's fit into this team so far?
Man, I looked at the tape at first when they first drafted him out of Texas, and I was like, what are they doing with this guy?
Same.
You see like some stiff hips and some like questionable like coverage decisions, and it just didn't look like a player. And then I kind of looked at the body and I got to see the person in the spring, and I'm like, this guy's a safety. Texas has just been playing him out of position his whole life. He just looks like a safety. He's strong. He's big. He runs like really well, closing speed wise. Even if he doesn't have like deep speed, like 40 time, he can close in 3 steps because he's got long legs and long strides. And I'm like, I understand now what the plan is here. I know like Mike or whoever might have been Grady Brown came out and, we'll try him everywhere on draft night or something like that. Like, no, these guys, they're turning this guy into strong safeties. That's the only reason to draft him. And then I thought, well, maybe, 6th-round pick, maybe they'll try to get him to the practice squad, and let him take a redshirt year, give him some time to adjust to the safety position. He's never done it before. Man, I don't know. He may be pushing that timeline forward because he has not shown any bumps in the road in moving from corner to safety. It looks awesome. He looks far better as a safety than he ever did as a corner. And so he seems to like it. I think he's going to – so he's a guy that to me is way ahead of where I thought. He's someone that I think is playing his way into a 53-man roster spot.
That's impressive, especially where he was drafted. And when you look at the body of work at Texas, I agree with you. When I watched the tape and when I saw the name draft, I was like, okay, wait a minute. Didn't quite get to this guy in my tape dogging for the offseason here. But I looked it up and I was like, yeah, Ryan Watts, I guess the measurables are what you're looking at here, because the tape definitely does not pop out at you in a good way at Texas. But you're absolutely right. The switch to safety is exactly what he needed. I think that's a player that is going to be interesting to continue to watch here. I want to go back to the defensive line just real quick and talk about that. My concern going into the offseason was the depth. What do you do if DeMarvin Leal doesn't work out? Is Isaiah Loudermilk a guy that you can trust? Mon Adams, he's got a good resume. Is he going to be able to take another step in this defense? So I thought depth would be maybe a concern. I'm starting to turn around on that a little bit and actually think that this might be a very deep group, especially when you consider Logan Lee and getting Dean Lowry back. I think he came back, was put on the active roster. Is that correct? Today?
Activated from the pup today. Yeah.
Activated from
his
pup
first
today.
practice, still working his way in, just did individual work, but.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I guess my question to you is, how do you feel about the depth overall on the defensive line? Maybe not as top heavy as we thought. Maybe there's some backbone to this.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of like they have depth players.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have impact players?
Yeah,
is the real question, right? I think we're all pretty sure Keanu Benton's one of those. Will Cam Hayward be one of those again? Probably TBD. I'm pretty bearish on. I'm bullish on his chances of at least being an elite run stopper again. I don't know if we're going to see the pass rush come back. Larry has been very up and down, and hot and cold in his time in Pittsburgh, but he has not been what I would call an impact guy in 2 seasons. And while they have depth, like Dean Lowry is going to be who he is. He's like a 8-year vet, I think. Isaiah Loudermilk is not just going to suddenly become someone else. Like this is his 4th season. He is who he is. DeMarvin Leal maybe is the one guy in that group that can kind of jump out and because he has had some untapped potential, I think, to this point, and maybe be something that he isn't. They could really use a complementary pass rusher, a third guy that can really get to the quarterback. And if Leal can do that, man, like I still don't know if they're a great defensive line, but I think they've kind of shored up at least one of the holes there. If Leal can be that kind of third guy to be a strong pass rusher behind Benton and Hayward.
All right, let's do this. Let's go ahead and just pop in some names here. I've got some names in some questions. So we talk about this. Black and Yellow, Texas Steel. Watts did good. How do you feel about Deuce Watts at slot? I'm going to say Deuce Watts is the guy he's talking about here. We saw a couple big catches out of him on Friday. What do you think about Deuce Watts in this wide receiver room?
Had a touchdown today at the in practice as well.
Okay.
Actually, it wasn't a touchdown. They ruled him out at the 1, but it was like a 35 yarder. Yeah, I have a hard time getting Deuce Watts onto the 53. I just don't know which of those guys. Could he outplay Quez Watkins down the road here? Yeah, but we're already talking about that group as kind of being 1-2 heavy. I think Scotty Miller's been really good. He's probably been better than I expected him to be. I didn't see speed when I looked at him on tape, and that was kind of his thing coming out of college, and that really concerned me. And I don't think he's as fast as he was in college anymore, but I'm seeing lots of separation, and that's been really few and far between for the Steelers wide receivers.
Yeah.
So it coming from anybody is a good thing. I think I have a hard time finding a place for Deuce Watts on the 53, but certainly a guy that could hang around in the practice squad. Des Fitzpatrick's been really good too. I think those are guys that you should probably expect to stick around. Tariq Black also, man, for a guy who just showed up in the middle of training camp, way better than most.
Did he suffer an injury in practice today?
Yeah,
okay.
Hamstring, I think.
Okay, gotcha. I thought I read that somewhere, but yeah, I think you've got a group of guys there that are really duking it out, and they're gonna keep fighting. They're playing well. We'll see who makes the 53 and who makes the practice squad out of that group. I got to run this by you though. My podcast partner on the Steelers Fix, I do another show that's audio only. Andrew Wilbar, he's got a nickname for Scotty Miller, calls him Scotty Bugatti. You think you can get that going around training camp?
I don't know about that one. I think I'm out on Scotty Bugatti personally.
Okay, I got you. Yeah. I don't know. It hit right for me at first. I don't know if it's still doing so. We'll see. But all right. Beanie Bishop. What did you think of Beanie Bishop? Dennis Povlak asks.
I thought he kind of had a tough day. He was challenged. He made a lot of tackles, which is usually not what you want when you're a cornerback. I think he'll be fine, but it was not what I would call a stellar first game. But I think I really like the player. I think he's a guy that I just have faith in that he'll figure it out, and I'm not concerned about him really at all. I think he's a guy to kind of maybe put in that position for a couple of years. Honestly, I think he can really do it.
Definitely not like worse than what the Steelers have fielded there in the past couple of years. Probably, I would assume is your thought as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So this one from X Concepts 1, I didn't notice Jack Coletto. How did he do? I saw him on the field a couple times, but I agree. I didn't really notice him too much. What did you think of Jack Coletto? Do you think he's a guy that makes this roster?
He had a fumble recovery on the second Justin Fields fumbled snap, which was actually a pretty nice play. I don't know, man. They use the fullback a lot, and I think they want to have one. I'm just not sure it's going to be him. Like I see the dedication to playing a fullback. I'm not sure I've seen anything from Jack Coletto that just like screams like this is a guy you have to keep on your NFL roster. I think Michael Pruitt can do a lot of the same things. And also play tight end. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Maybe they'll look elsewhere too. I don't know. They seem to be very insistent that they're going to play a fullback. So, I don't think I would consider Connor Hayward for the fullback. Kind of like he's not an I formation lead blocker in the whole kind of fullback. He can certainly do some pass game things, but he's not that kind of player. So, I would say right now, I would say you're keeping one of Coletto and Pruitt, but not both.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
It does. It absolutely makes sense. The last guy I want to ask you about, he's one of my favorite players on the roster. I thought in the Matt Canada days, I thought that he was a guy who could even unlock what Matt Canada likes to do, and that's Darnell Washington because of his versatility as a blocker and a pass catcher. He's been, based on reports, virtually impregnable as a blocker, and I wanted to see if that registers with you as well, as if he's a guy that you cannot get by. Is he going to be a big time player?
Sort of like having a battleship on the other side of your tackle. It's just, it's a long way around and you really don't want to go right down the barrels either. He's so much better as a blocker than he was last year. I think that's the thing that really jumps out to me is that he was already pretty good, but man, he is better in a noticeable way right now. I don't know that he's ever going to be like a huge part of somebody's passing offense, but I think they can find better ways to use him than they did last year. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a guy that, especially in the red zone, makes for you can design some things to use him well. And like, he's not going to be a guy that George Kittle's all over the field. That's not the type of player he's going to be. He's not going to be a true, like I always say, I'm a big fantasy football guy. If Pat Freiermuth goes down, I'm not grabbing any shares really of Darnell Washington.
No.
So
I take more Connor Hayward.
Yeah, exactly.
From a fantasy perspective.
Correct. Yeah, I agree with that. I just think that he's a guy that if you lean into his skill sets the right way, he can be very helpful to your offense in real life football.
Yeah, I think so. Third downs, play action, goal line. Like, you need 3 yards. Just go throw it to the giant guy that's bigger than everyone. Like, it's not, you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. I think he's going to play a lot. Like, there's a lot of 12 personnel, 13 personnel in my chart. So, I mean, he's going to be out there. I think they'll probably use him a lot more than he was used last year.
Sounds good. And then before I let you go, I've got to ask you this one last question. Justin Fields, he won the home run derby, I guess, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he's your new champion. And now Kenny Pickett wasn't there to defend his title. But anyway, Justin Fields wins it. The fact that Kenny Pickett, though, won it the last couple of years, is this a bad sign for Justin Fields, or are we not correlating this to anything on the field?
It's a bad sign for Russell Wilson and John Rice Plumlee. These guys were Division I baseball players. What are you doing? How do you lose a home run derby in the sport? Russell Wilson was drafted highly. Man, you can't let Justin Fields come in and steal your thunder like that. I mean, I'm disappointed in those guys more than I am impressed by Fields. Like, he's a great athlete.
Yeah,
it doesn't surprise me that he can hit a baseball well, but man, you can't be sacrificing your turf like that, fellas. It's a bad look. It's a bad look.
I gotta say, before we go, I'm a big Ohio State fan, so big Justin Fields fan, obviously, for those reasons. But that you'd be hard pressed to find a more impressive looking athlete at any position, anywhere in any sport than Justin Fields is, and he made sure that everybody knew about that today at the Home Run Derby. Sounds like so. Alan, thank you so much for coming on. Tell everybody where they can find your work, where they can follow you on X as well, and yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, at @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, and TikTok. At PGH Steelers Now. The site's account, SteelersNow.com, is where all the work is. You can find my podcast, Steelers Afternoon Drive and Steelers Morning Rush, at the Steelers Now YouTube page or anywhere you find podcasts.
We always appreciate you guys coming on the show, and we appreciate your work as well at Steelers Now, following closely with the Steelers. Thanks again for all the listeners. Thank you for tuning in to the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A. We'll be back next week. We'll talk a little bit more about the Steelers and their training camp situation, the second preseason game, as we'll have seen it. We'll be back with much more here on the Steelers Q&A and the Steel Curtain Network. Until next time, that's going to do it for us. We'll talk to you later.